Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. It is a snowy afternoon here in Scranton when I'm recording this. And of course, I didn't want to sound like a Debbie Downer when I was talking to friends a couple weeks back, but I said, March is that wild card. March is that tricky month. So while we were all jumping for joy when we had warm weather in January and February, which was nice, but not normal, March is always that tricky month. So I just hope it wraps up soon. For my own selfish reasons, on March 26th, I'm running the Scranton half, and I really don't want to be trudging through snow. Plus, April, I'm headed to see my good pal Oliver. So I'm hoping, because we've had snow in April before. So in any case, I'm really hoping that this gets it out of its system and we can then just go to the intended March weather at the end of the month and get to some spring with those flowers so they can grow those. I saw some tulips popping up and spring crocus, and I don't know that they're going to make it now that they have snow on top of them. But anyway, let's be hopeful and positive. So we're in the middle of March when this is airing, and it's March, as I had mentioned a couple weeks ago, is National Women's History Month. But also, as I've said, I love to focus on women every week with this podcast. So I don't feel pressure perhaps to do something special, a special episode featuring women, because I feature women every week. However, I did want to kind of do something special this week around some local women in history with our favorite historian. And I love the fact, I have to say before I introduce her, that she is awesome because she's having a cocktail on this snowy afternoon and I'm having a boring cup of coffee, which of course you'll have to go on YouTube and see my Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl mug. And on the back, it says, if it's morning, this must be coffee, available for purchase to support this podcast. Okay, so let me introduce a serial guest, Julie Esty, who has been on numerous times because she is a woman of many talents and many different faces and voices. The departed player, dearly departed players. She's in the Dunmore Cemetery, doing all sorts of fun characters and bringing history to life in the cemetery. And today she is going to share some of her research, because she's an amazing researcher, about some local women in the Scranton area who are pretty awesome. And we know a ton of awesome women today, but we're going to take a little look back and walk through history. So welcome, Julie.
Hi, Jeannine. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And I'm impressed that you have a nice cocktail there. And I'm bummed that I don't have one. So could you tell us what you've got in your glass today?
It is a glass of red wine. If it's any good, I don't really know because I don't know my wines or my ripples or whatever you want to call them. I just usually go for whatever has a nice looking label on it. And then
That can be fun.
That's it. Like I don't drink wine, is nothing personal, but wine is really not my thing.
Okay. All right.
I do better with the old high school standbys of beer.
Hey, I like them all. I like beer. I like martinis. But I do tend to like certain white wines. But I'm with you on that fun label. When you're going through the aisles and you see something fun, like I know I've bought Arrogant or Fat Bastard, or I think it's Arrogant Bastard, or one of those kind of bastard ass, jackass, smart ass, dumbass, any of those labels that crack me up or have a cute little frog or bicycle or something French on them. I'll buy them. I mean, what the heck, especially if you're not spending a lot of money. But I just got a glimpse in the background, and I don't think we'll see her again. I saw Abby. Oh, there she is in the background. She being a good girl.
Yeah, for right now, I don't know how long that'll last. She's kind of antsy because of the snow. She wants to go for a WALK.
And we have to spell it.
Yeah, we're not. I'm not having it. She would, but I'm not having that today. So she's kind of
A little restless. Yeah, I understand
restless.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, Julie has an adorable little rescue. And when the last time I saw Julie, I got to visit with Abby. And at first she gave me a little toot, but then she was all about the friendliness and like the petting. She was adorable. And she even has a cool little hoodie. So she's a styling little girl.
Yeah, she is.
So let's get into, I mean, we were talking before I hit the record button. As we know a lot of great women locally, and women are strong. Women have had to be throughout history. So why don't you tell me a little bit? I know you've been working on this and I really appreciate your research. What are some of the things that you found in your research, or the women that you'd like to talk about today?
All of the women that I look at in general, and I have been doing this for 25 years. you know, you can see that the region, the women in the coal region, the women in the Lackawanna Valley of all ethnicities are very strong women. We had no choice. We had to be. I mean, we didn't have the best circumstances going on here. The majority of women were not well off. If your husband got killed in the mines, you were really up the creek without a paddle. It's a very hard life here for the average woman, I think. And, before I talk about, women of note or some of my favorite women in history, I want to say, that it was all of them. They all managed to band together. They all managed to figure out how to make it work. They all managed to raise their kids and go on. I mean, when you look at their recipes, what they did to survive and stuff like that. And we grew up with it. We still do some of the things that maybe now other parts of the country would consider odd because we've learned how to survive. I know my daughter has gone on to live in another town, and some of the things that we do here to keep things going, like she still continues, like we've had to. We're a strong bunch.
Yeah.
And, rich, poor, whatever, we're strong from the and low really isn't the best word, from the poorest to the ones that are well off. You've got your poorer women who are raising their families and doing the best they can. And you have your well off women who are trying to raise funds for like the Poor Farm and Hillside Home and all the charities around here. They're not just, over at the Century Club playing bridge and having nice little teas and stuff like that. They really, really did do their best to try to better things for people around here. So it's all of the women that were here, even though I might touch on a few of them, we really owe a lot to all of them. They were all wonderful threads in the tapestry of this valley.
Yeah. And on that note, I don't say this to toot my horn, but that's why with my format, I love to feature women every week because there are many women who've come before us and we're coming before the next generation and all the people who came before us that were the first in things, the first women CEOs, the first women, vice presidents, all the first that have made it a little easier for other women to come behind them. But banding together, I think is so important. And even if it just means, when I do have different guests on every week, if another woman hears it and thinks, you know what, maybe I could do that, hearing this other woman's story, get inspired. That's my hope. And you talk about strong women. I grew up with my grandmother that lived with us. Her mother, Anna McGraw, came from Ireland. And I always say it's that tough Irish blood. My grandmother was Esther Cyrilla, which I'd love to research that name. I have no idea where that came from. Esther Cyrilla Stevens. And then her married name was Dolan. And she lived with my parents and I and my brother. And she was as tough as they come. She got a little softer for my brother and I, but through the years, but she had a tough mom who would beat her with a hairbrush when she was not behaving, which back then, I don't know what not behaving was. I'm sure you didn't get away with much, but she was a tough woman, but I learned a lot. She was strong. She outlived her husband by, I didn't even know my grandfather. So she outlived her husband by that many years. So he died in 1968 and she lived till 1993. So she was a tough woman and a sharp sense of humor that she probably didn't even think she was being funny, but it's that Irish, fire. So I am proud to be, even though she could have been at times a little softer with her words. I won't even say some of the things that she said through the years about people, but she didn't mince her words, but she was strong and I did admire her for that. And she also had a tender side for her grandchildren. So I just want to mention her, Esther, grandma, Nana, I think we called her Nana and Graham through the years, but I loved one of my favorite stories, and then I'll send it back to you. Because I'm a little smart ass, I used to love teasing her that I was going to mess her hair after she came back from the hairdresser. And I would torment her and stand above her and go, I'm going to mess it. I'm going to mess it. And she didn't smoke. She didn't drink. She didn't say the F word, but she'd say, God damn it, Jeannine, don't you dare touch my hair. And she would kind of flip out. And I would never, ever would do that to her. But I used to love to torment her. So that was fun for me. And I do miss her. But anyway, so here's to strong women. Now let's hear some of the highlights. Like you said, these aren't the only ones and these aren't the favorites, but these are some of the ones we're going to talk about today.
One woman that I really, really love, and I put her on the tour last year. She's buried in the Home of the Friendless section, which is in the Dunmore Cemetery, which is usually, your unknowns or your very, very poor folks, is Marianne Campbell. And Marianne Campbell is living up in New York State. She's married, life goes on. She's got a kid. She gets to be about 50 years old and her husband dies. So she's at a crossroads in her life. What am I going to do? I can stay single and do something with my life, or I can get married again. And she opted to not get married again, which you got to figure 1880s, 1890s. That's a pretty cool thing, because this lady is going to embark on whatever the next phase of her life is. And, there's not a lot of options back in 1880, 1890. And what she does is she joins some missionaries and she ends up in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And she ends up at an orphanage / technical school that teaches Eskimo children and orphans up there how to succeed in life. All basic stuff, woodworking, blah, 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 like our equivalent today of home economics, I guess, or whatever, how to manage their money a little bit, how to, repair their clothes, things like that. And the man that runs this orphanage at the time that she goes up there is a man named Curtis Coe. So Marianne befriends the Coe family, and, she stays with them for many, many years. And eventually the Coes decide that they're going to leave and they're going to come down from Alaska down into Washington State. So she goes with them. And then the Coes come here to what is now Keystone College. And Coe was a principal there. So that's how the woman ends up here in the Lackawanna Valley. She comes with this family, and, they must have thought an awful lot of her, because they named one of their daughters after her. And, now Marianne's getting up in years and she really doesn't have any family. Her son was in California. So she ends up at the Home of the Friendless. And that's how she ends up buried back in a stone that just has a number on it, no name, nothing or whatever. And you think, well, she's poor. She didn't really have a great life. Like maybe she, somebody just found her. Well, that's not the case at all. Here, this woman had an amazing, interesting life where she helped, she was at this crossroad in her life, and, she helps all these other people, so I think Marianne is, and you have to imagine what Marianne has to deal with throughout the course of her life. Another one that
let me ask you, Julie, before you move on. So she's still she doesn't have a name then on her, her stone or anything, right? She has a number.
She's got a number.
Oh, okay.
She's got a number. Now I know where she is. I went out, because when I find them, I go out and I let them know. It's like this oddball thing. Like I'll touch the stone and it'll be like, I know who you are. So that way, you're not unknown anymore.
You're not forgotten. Yeah.
No, she's not forgotten. I think that's a really cool thing. Here this woman is, and this is how she comes into the Lackawanna Valley. And from what I see, when she was at the Home of the Friendless, she did help take care of some of the people that were there. So she continued on doing her service work as long as she possibly could. And then another person that I talked about on the tour last year, who's very, very interesting. She starts out here and she ends up totally somewhere else, is a girl named Jenna Hosey. And I'll be speaking about Jenna in September at Covenant Presbyterian Church. Her name is on a plaque over there. Jenna was a young lady, 28, 29, 30 years old. And when World War I broke out, Jenna wanted to go over to France to help in the canteens over there. She volunteered through some of the religious organizations that were here. And when selections were made, Jenna didn't originally make the first round. So it looked like she wasn't going to go anywhere, that she was going to be here. But then what probably happened is more spaces opened up. So this young lady is now on a mission to go to France and spend at least 6 months over there working in a canteen for our soldiers. So she leaves here at the end of January, sets sail for England, makes it as far as Liverpool. And of course, not only do we have World War I going on, we've got the pandemic of 1918.
Mm.
Jenna never made it any further than Liverpool, England, because she ended up getting sick and passing away. And now you have this local girl from Scranton who is buried in Manchester, England. But she tried, here she is, she's a young lady. She tried, she's doing her best, for the service. She wants to volunteer, and, you set off with all those great hopes, and, she tried, and you have to give her credit.
Yeah,
Young girl.
absolutely.
She had a whole life.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, she had her whole life ahead of her, and she expected that she was going to go out and, we've got a rip-roaring thing going on here, and everything is going to be great, and I'm going to do all the service work. And something as simple as a germ just took her out. And we know what it's like now.
Yeah. And back then, I'm sure there was probably not nearly as much prevention or even like catching it quickly. So the poor woman didn't have a chance. And no, you're right. She went over there with the best of intentions. Mm-hmm. So now she's buried in Manchester. Yeah, does her family have anything here for her locally, like to acknowledge her? Or?
There is a stone in a cemetery down the line. Her father is buried here in the Dunmore Cemetery. Her mother actually, to back up a little bit, her father died, and her mother married a local attorney. So her mother was married to two men that were buried in the Dunmore Cemetery. And in the end, she opted to go down the line with her family, and they put a stone down there. I think they're somewhere near Reading. And they put a stone down there for Jenna, but there is one in England for her.
Wow.
And it's not just there, it's not just like your older women who do stuff around here. You've got your young ones too. It's everybody.
Yeah.
And then I have Ava Hetzel. Ava Hetzel was down in downtown Scranton. I like Ava. Ava's been a regular because she was what we would consider a foot doctor, sort of. She's taking care of all the nasties, the ingrown toenails, the corns,
all the nasties.
Like yeah, and what's interesting about her, she's got a couple things that are interesting about her. Is she does house calls. I wish I could get somebody to come here to take all the nastiness with my feet. She does house calls, and she goes and she takes care of ingrown toenails and calluses and all that bit. But she also does she's a hairdresser. She does the first permanent wave in the city of Scranton, and she develops a line of makeup that's very successful. And think about it. It's pretty successful because we've got such a huge theater population coming in here. And the actors and actresses liked her makeup. So they would go and they would get Ava Hetzel's makeup. So
what year was it?
Oh, she's like the late 1800s, early 1900s. But imagine the permanent wave machine she's using. It's just probably one of those ones that's got the cords on it and everything. I can't even imagine. Okay, I just can't even imagine what that, because I get them now and they're bad enough now. I just can't even begin to imagine what Ava Hetzel's machine was like. But she was downtown doing business with the permanent waves and the feet and the makeup for years and years. Very vital part of Scranton's society, because all these ladies that could afford to go to her, if Ava wasn't taking care of their feet and hooking them up with great hair and makeup, they weren't going anywhere.
Well, seriously. And I mean, back in the day, right? We talk about the early days of Scranton, the people who did have money. I mean, they were pretty rich. So she was quite the entrepreneur then. I mean, wow. Yep. Can you imagine someone who comes to the house, you got a traveling pedicure, get your hair done and your makeup? I like that idea. She was onto something.
Yes, she was. She was really on to something. So I kind of like give a heads up a lot. We also have another woman. Now, granted, she was here for years, and she did leave, and she went on to do wonderful things too. We have Harriet Clay Penman. Harriet is buried in the Dunmore Cemetery, and Harriet is well educated, and she writes a women's column for the newspapers here in Scranton back in the day. And she would much rather write about meatier subjects than, taking care of a house. And, she would much rather write about politics and the things going on, than cooking and cleaning or whatever. But she does it. And then her husband passes away. So again, Harriet is at a crossroad. You notice, like, we're noticing a pattern here. When husbands die, like, you have your choice. You can either go in a whole new direction or you can get another one. And, some ladies opted not to get another one. And Harriet didn't. And she packed up her bags and headed to California. So she ends up out there writing, from time to time, a society column. So imagine some of the people Harriet is moving around with Hollywood in the 20s and the 30s.
Wow.
Okay, she's really meeting some movers and shakers. Well, Harriet ends up, what happens is people out in California wanted to find, like, theaters are gross because you don't have air conditioning like we have now. They were looking for an affordable alternative for families to come out and see shows. And they noticed that there was one area, and I'm sure I can't say it correctly. It's Kayawinga Pass, I think, that the acoustics there were really, really wonderful. And a group of people got together, and Harriet was one of them, and they worked to establish the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh,
so you've got Harriet out there who came from the coal region. So that's another thing. Like, not only are we awesome here, we take our awesomeness to other places and spread it around. So Harriet works on the Hollywood Bowl, and the Hollywood Bowl is huge now. And when she passes away, she comes back here, so she's in the Dunmore Cemetery. So it's like it's interesting how we spoke out. It's like a wheel, and we do our good things here, but we try to take it on the road and spread it around.
That's amazing that she was working on the Hollywood Bowl. That's impressive.
Yeah. So we've got some really, really interesting stuff here. Another woman that left this area, Frances Swan. She was the first woman poor director in the city of Scranton. This is going way back. Well, when her husband died, she was at a crossroad, and she married his brother.
Oh, that was an interesting choice. Okay.
Which is an interesting, it's an interesting, like, I just can't, like, I don't know if I could get into that, that's a little, but anyway, she ends up leaving here and going to California.
Another one. Okay.
Yeah, she goes on to be mega wealthy, and she had a beautiful home, and I guess a bank wanted to buy it. So they decided that they would cut it in half and move it somewhere else. And they did. They cut it in half, they moved it somewhere else. And when Frances died, she came back here, but she was the first woman poor director. And I'm sure she was probably not very popular with a lot of people, because her thing was, she was trying to take care of people who were abusing the system, like submitting receipts for things that didn't, like, the powers that be. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Not the recipients. There were a lot of people, officials, that were doing things that were not okay with funds.
Yeah.
And she was onto it, and she was trying to shut it down. So I'm sure she probably wasn't really, really popular with some people here, but she was trying to make things better for the people at Hillside Home and the Poor Farm and stuff like that, by clamping down on some of the corruption that was going on here.
I love her name, Frances Swan. There's something very special about that. It sounds
Yeah,
very nice.
Frances Swan. She's been a regular. So there's just so many great women in this valley. You have Harriet Watrous, who is Stella of Lackawanna, who wrote poetry. Of course, you have Marie Wainwright, who's had roots here. Well, she wasn't from here. She had roots here, and she is buried here. She played the stage with Edwin Booth. Bertha Galland, another big stage actress. She was here. We've just got so many wonderful people in the Lackawanna Valley that are so interesting. And I spoke to
Yeah.
you before. I wanted to talk about two women, one who I knew, just to show the tenacity of women and how they will band together and stick together. And it really is something that all of us do need to do. I mean, hats off to you for what you do with your women's programs and your podcasts and stuff. And you're creating a safe space for women when they want, to go out with the events that you have.
Thank you.
So like that's really wonderful. But getting back to the ladies that I want to kind of wrap up with, when I was in junior high school, my English teacher, Mary McNamara, lived at, I believe it was 518 Adams Avenue, which is across the street from Scranton Central High School, or now Lackawanna College.
Okay.
If you came out the door of Lackawanna College and made a left and went up the street as if you were going toward the CYC, when you crossed the street there at the light, right there on that spot of property, there was a beautiful Victorian home. And at the time that I knew Mary McNamara as a teacher, that home was probably 100 years old. If not, it was getting close to it. I understand there was something like 15 rooms in it, 5 fireplaces.
Whew.
And I'm sure time had probably taken some tolls on it. I'm sure the upkeep on a home that big would be significant, but that's neither here nor there. Mary McNamara was living there, and she had a sister named Anna Rita. Anna Rita was working in New York City. She was the head of the Children's Welfare Board for many, many years up there. But in the early 1970s, mid 1970s, the city of Scranton wanted that home because they wanted to put a playground on it. And the McNamara sisters fought for about 6 years to keep it. Now, I'm not saying whether the city was right or wrong. That's not my affair to hash over the legalities or whatever. My thing is that these two sisters banded together and did everything they could to save their homestead. And they were educated women. Mary McNamara went to the University of Toronto. She was the first American woman to be a head girl in one of the houses up there, which I think that that's a pretty big deal. Her sister, Anna Rita, went to a university in Canada. Then she also went to a specialized nursing school, and then she went to Berkeley out in California. She was a nurse. Anna Rita, from what I can determine, worked as a public health nurse on the Manhattan Project, which is huge. The Manhattan Project is huge. That's the atomic bomb. And it's hard tracing that because I'm sure a lot of the atomic bomb employees and things like that, we're just not, that's confidential information.
Yeah.
But Anna Rita, according to her obituary, was a public health nurse on the Manhattan Project. When she was done with that, she went to New York City and she became, head of children's services and public health and whatever up in New York City for many, many years. So Anna Rita comes back. And they fought for all those years to try and hang on to their house. And in the end, they lost. You had to know they were going to lose. It wasn't the first time this had happened. There was a wonderful woman in Dunmore named Jenny Brink who had the Exchange Hotel, and she had the same thing happen to her. There's eminent domain when the city comes along and says, we want to put sidewalks here, and it doesn't matter if you're here, we have the right to take this. And Jenny Brink also lost probably 80 years before the McNamara sisters. It just happens. So the McNamara's lost, I think they got probably about $50,000, $54,000 for their home. And their home was bulldozed. And every time I drive past that little corner of land there, which a playground might have been on it for a short while, now I think there's dumpster bins on it. I think of those two sisters standing together and fighting for what they believed in. And there were many times when my sister and I were in the fight with my mother, trying to take care of my mother and the whole nursing home system, and my father, trying to get the best care I could and that my sister could for my parents, that there were many times that I thought of the McNamara sisters standing together and fighting. And I want to say that there are a lot of ladies out there, and many of them have been on your podcast, and you included, that I would stand shoulder to shoulder with. Because we just rock, and we will rock it until the very end. You, Lucy Brails, Marianne at the Historical Society, my daughter, there are just so many of us. And you know what? We're all doing the best we can to leave this place, to make this place a better place than it was when we got here, and to leave it a better place.
Yeah.
So hats off to you on Women's History. I'm sure 100 years from now, I know if I was looking at the newspaper 100 years from now to do somebody, and I saw you, you'd make the tour, Jeannine.
Woo! I am somebody. I have arrived after I'm dead.
Yeah, you would be somebody I would put on the tour. So that's the thing. We're all trying our best. There were so many wonderful women here in the past. It's hard to single them out, and there are just so many wonderful women now in the arts, in politics, and and I would like to think that we really do make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think we do.
Yeah. And I mentioned when I mentioned my grandmother Esther before, I like to believe that I have some of her tough spirit, because I can dig my heels in. I mean, I can be pretty damn persistent and stubborn, but it's important to get it done. And sometimes as a woman, you have to be extra determined to get things done. And I know this isn't exactly it. Well, I mean, it is on topic, but I just wanted to mention, we're talking about women sticking together. I finally had the chance, just because it's kind of timely, a couple weekends ago, to watch the movie She Said, about the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, and the two New York Times reporters who broke the story. And I mean, I before, of course, I wanted to see it, but I don't know why. I guess I'm just so used to shit happening to women and the crap that keeps happening. It was it sucks. But watching this movie both infuriated me and also had me crying. I mean, these two reporters, again, I know it's a movie, so maybe it's not 100% accurate or true, but they stuck together. They helped one another, and they, both had families to raise. They had been threatened. I mean, they just were kick-ass women who fought and fought and fought to get this story out there. And even the women who came forward, like Ashley Judd, one of the first to, and Rose McGowan, I think the one actress that, was getting kind of a bad name for coming out or whatever. But to see that, and just I won't even go down the path because it's too long and too bumpy, but how much crap the men like him and Jeffrey Epstein have gotten away with. But watching that again, it infuriated me. It made me cry, but it also made me proud that these women had the tenacity to keep going and to help. I mean, there were men involved as well on the whole group of them that published it, but these two women reporters in particular that were not afraid of Harvey Weinstein and how he had just manipulated and paid off and scared and blackballed these women. It's just again, it made me very emotional, but very proud that there are women who are willing to fight, and they're not just helping themselves, they are helping other women, and they're stopping people like him who are, quite frankly, disgusting. But so it's good to see these women who do fight and make it, maybe they make it seem a little bit more okay for the women coming behind them, to make a difference and clear a path.
Well, when I started in this hobby 25 years ago, I mean, I was not welcome at all by men. it was a tough road. And, they wouldn't speak to me. To a degree, I was blacklisted. They took every one of my jobs that they could. I mean, it was tough. And, I just said, you know what? I'm going to make it my mission to be the last man standing. And you know what? I just keep moving forward. That's it. Don't look over my shoulder anymore. You just keep moving forward, and you hook up with other people of like mind, like again, like you, like Luz, like the wonderful women that are out there. Like if we all work together, we get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully, I know with the younger generation, things are changing and their mindsets are different. So I do believe there's going to be a brighter future. But for those of us, and even for my comedy nights, and this is something that like I'll even say I struggle with. Like, I'm not out there trying to be, have a Netflix special or, be the next top comedian or whatever, but I'm doing my thing because no more than every other career, women are not respected in comedy. They're not, they're still not. You still see a bunch of shows with a ton of guys and maybe one woman. So that's why I've made my shows all women comedians, and I want the women audience. And I won't say I've gotten pushback, but I've been questioned and asked, is it really just for women and why? And believe me, I'm the type of person that doesn't, even though I make jokes, I don't take things lightly. It could be part my, Catholic upbringing and guilt and always questioning myself, but I don't take it lightly. And I have sat down and thought, maybe I should just stop these ladies' nights, these comedy nights for women, because I get pushback and I have men who want to buy tickets and I have women who want to bring boyfriends and husbands. And then there's the whole issue of the removing gender. And the bottom line I come back to is I am trying to raise up women, the comedians, and pay them fairly, because believe you me, I pay better, I think, than a lot of clubs or other organizers, but also to create a space where women in the audience who can relate to the jokes feel comfortable laughing, and in a almost like just like men have had for so long their own private clubs, but a space for them, for us, I should say, to have camaraderie, laugh at what's going on. And it's like, when I've had Snickers through the years, like, oh, what are you going to tell jokes about, like periods and tampons or whatever? It's like, yeah, we might. Yep. I'm going through, I'm in perimenopause, and I'm going to probably talk about it, because that's part of my life. Just like, all kinds of shit that we can relate to as women. So for me, I don't take it lightly. I have struggled with the idea, but my idea is empowering women, and that is still important to me. So that is something that I still believe in and I want to keep doing. And I hope that women appreciate it. I know that not everyone does, but that's okay, because I have a reason for it. And I hope it's not just my reason. I hope other people fully can understand it, respect it, and hopefully, appreciate it.
Well, having attended one of your shows recently, I will say you're doing a great job, and I will be in your audience again. It was wonderful. Had a great time. And you create a very safe space for women. And I thought you guys were hilarious.
Well, thank you. Yes, Julie was at a recent one at the axe throwing place in Scranton. Myself, Mary Raypatch, Megan Getz out of Philadelphia, very funny. Mary, of course, hilarious. And Mickey Orlowski, another funny young woman in Scranton who has the best family followers that come out to laugh with us. And I just think it's, there are times I wonder if it's an antiquated notion that I'm carrying out, but I don't believe it is. And at least for me, I just think it is nice for women to come together.
It was a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll keep doing those as long as I can get asses in the seats, as they say, And I do think it is meant to be kind of relatable. I mean, it's not like the whole show is about periods and pads. I mean, it's other things too that we're going through. It's other things, but it's coming through our eyes and our lenses as women who are going through this world. And I just think that is important. It's important to have our voices heard and for other people to actually hear them, because I can't tell you how many times I've talked to different friends, even women who've been in, around a while in their 50s and 60s, who think, oh, gee, I thought I was the only person that thought that or worried about that. And it's like, no, we need to know it's okay and share how we think and feel and connect and support one another when we can. So absolutely. Well, I appreciate what you're doing, Julie. I think it's amazing. If I wasn't so lazy, I'd like to do more research, but I get bored and I get lazy. But I admire that you do it because I think the stories that you tell in the cemetery are just amazing. Some very serious, some very funny, but just it's important because these people they've passed on, but they shouldn't be forgotten.
No.
So I think it's great. Any before we wrap up here, any closing words? And your daughter rocks too, by the way, Megan. Of course, we love Megan.
Yes, we do. No, just we all just need to keep doing what we're doing, and we need to stick together. Wendy has said it so many times, Wendy and my cast, we get further when we all talk. We need to be connected. Again, like I said, you know what? I would stand in the trenches with any of you. You, Wendy, my sister, like I said, Luz. She's a great lady, Luz Cabrils. I mean, you're out there trying to do the right thing. We're all just trying to do the right thing. And, alone, it's difficult, but when we stand together, it's just so much more. So you just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And we're going to keep things in northeastern Pennsylvania really interesting, Jeannine.
Yes, we are. And Julie mentioned a couple folks there. Luz Cabral, she was on a couple weeks ago from Scranton Films, a great storyteller, filmmaker here in Scranton. Awesome. Yeah, she's wonderful. She actually did a documentary on Julie that I think, am I wrong in saying it's available on the website or maybe it's not? I forget what she told me.
Scranton Films has it available on their website.
Okay. So Scranton Films.
Yeah. I think if you go to Scranton Films, they might have it. There's just like, we can talk about so many people from the past that were amazing, but I mean, currently, like there's just so many cool women in this area that are doing such cool things. And Luz is one of them. Like I said, then you have Marianne at the Historical Society. I believe Marianne was a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
Marianne has been there, as long as I'm doing the deal here. I think she was over at LHS before I started doing the deal. I mean, she's doing her best to preserve everything that she can here in history. Everybody, we're all trying. And you know what? I think we're doing a great job. I think in our own little corners, we're all doing a great job, but when we band together, like we really are forces of nature. And
That's right.
we just need to keep it going. We need to stick together. We need to keep it going, and good things happen. Good things happen when we all gab and we all get together.
Yes. A couple of my favorite things there. Yes. Talking, communicating, connecting. Absolutely key. We're not alone. Reach out for help when you need it. Offer help when others need it.
Yep.
And like Julie mentioned, she was at my show recently, support that I wholeheartedly, absolutely appreciate.
Oh my God, it was great.
I can't tell you, like, I won't want to turn it negative, but how many times, if I had $1 for everyone who says through the years, oh my God, I'd love to come see your show. And by the 12th time they say it to me, I'm getting to a place where I want to say, you're full of shit. So stop saying it. But, and I understand people have busy lives and stuff and, whatever, but action is definitely something, that speaks louder than words. So I do want to say thank you for coming out because it is important. I appreciate the support, friends, family, whoever can come out, whether it's what I do or what Julie does in the cemetery, Luz with her films. There is so many wonderful, talented people here, talented women who are creating art, who are doing things in science and sports, and you name it. Your kind words, your support, your help when they ask for help, or maybe if they don't ask and they seem like they could use some input, sticking together, like Julie said, helping one another, being there, offering support, all of that is so important. Even if it some days seems like you're not affecting people, which is often how I feel many days, keep going because you are. And even if it's one person.
Jeannine.
Thank you. I didn't say that just to get, but no, how it is some days.
Like,
challenging.
How about you posted that thing on your Facebook page about things to do before Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
That were nice. I got so much pleasure out of that thing. It was like you jogged me into doing something that was kind of on the same line. So you do, like, you're a huge force around here.
Oh, thank you, Julie. But yeah, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but to that point, like think about that, I guess, when we post on social media or say things, both good and bad, that, you could be influencing people in either direction, but just think that, people may not put a like or a comment, but they might be influenced by something positive that you share or your positive story. You might be influencing them and inspiring them and giving them information that they need. Sometimes it's just information like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that, or I didn't know
Yeah.
I could go there to get that kind of help. It's important. So I think, using social media for good, sharing and inspiring, I think all of that is important. And I think it helps us all. So, yeah. So I want to thank you so much, Julie. And I'm so bummed that I didn't join you with wine today. All I have is my second cup of coffee, but that's all right. I'm trying to minimize my wine intake, although I haven't been great about it. With the race coming up on March 26th, I should have given up liquor the past month so I'd be healthier to run. But I kind of go, you know what, Jeannine? You don't eat properly. You drink wine. So just take the results that you get. You're still out there getting it done. So
Yep.
that's all
Yep.
right.
That's it.
There'll
That's
be
it.
wine
You
at the
just keep
finish
going.
line.
We'll be rooting for you, Jeannine.
Thank you so much. Well, as always, I thank you, my listeners. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Julie is one of our favorites. I know I'll have her back again. Our favorite historian and all around talented woman of Northeastern Pennsylvania here. So keep listening. As always, I say, if you enjoyed the show, please share it and remember to subscribe. And even if you didn't enjoy the show, please share it because someone else out there might enjoy it. And I do appreciate you listening. And as I always say, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.